Jordan Viener, Chief Brand Officer of VienerX.
Viener, Chief Operating Officer of VienerX.
Guys, give us a cloud level overview of VienerX and what it is that you guys service provider and what industries you work in.
Yeah, VienerX is a industry-agnostic enterprise technology management firm. What that means is we're a soup-to-nuts IT firm, everything from CIO and data analytics, AI, all the way down to structured cabling and what actually goes into the wall of what you're building so you can connect to your network.
Awesome. So when did you guys get started? And let's kind of go, let's get in the Wayback Machine and give me the year and what's the story of the founding of the company?
Yeah, so our firm was founded by our father, Wayne Viener, in 1991. And he got into computers. He started off as a CPA, went into kind of your classic, what I guess would now be considered Big Four audit, back then Big Six audit. And he was working on the floor as a field auditor, got into the management of that. And his story is one day he was on an audit and they ran into a computerized accounting system and they basically did like a raise your hand if you know anything about computers and can take this. And he was the guy kind of in the back of the room that raised his hand, got into computerized networking, started an accounting firm. And really with that shift of those early big accounting systems, he took over and decided to get into IT, started off as a big Great Plains partner into the Microsoft Dynamics era, and then into really CIO level services that really help that mid-market and help IT drive revenue more so than just being a constant cost center, which is unfortunately the way that a lot of this is seen by businesses.
Yeah, and I'll add on to some of the history elements is our company, VienerX, has gone through quite a few iterations, and Mason can speak more on this. This is what we're in now is what I'd call probably the fifth version of this company, if I'm counting correctly. But Mason and I obviously joined way after 1991. And in fact, Mason was born 10 years after the company was founded. Mason's been on board a little bit longer than I have, but we both started this company in high school.
Awesome. And so when you guys, so let's kind of talk to your personal story and then we'll get back over to Dad for a little bit. What was it like as a child? All right. So what we have is I have a lot of founders that are parents. So we talk about the parents' perspective as a founder. And I admittedly, I've joked around about bringing my own kids on the episode to actually talk to them about what it was like. You know, my kids they were also like you, Mason. They were born. My daughter was born the same year that I really invested and jumped into solopreneurship. And I quit my job was about a month or two before my daughter was born. So I'm really interested to know what it's like as a child to see your parent doing something that is not what every other parent is doing. And I don't mean holding them up as a superhero, because I also mean the negative part and the weight and the stress that also does, while the joys and the droughts that kind of exist in an entrepreneurial parenting structure.
Yeah, Nate, and I'll give you actually two stories that go along this line. One is about VienerX and obviously the piece I've gotten into. And then the other is watching Jordan and I's mom purchase a company when I was a little bit older and kind of had that understanding of it. The first part of it is for us, it's inside of my being, you know, being the entrepreneur, having both parents be the entrepreneur. That's really that engaged owner operator in a mid-sized business, or that would, I mean, depends on what scale you look on, small to mid-sized business. And what you see on the positive side is the grind, what it takes to make it, what it takes to lead others, what it takes for everything that you own to be produced by something that's very tangible that you can see on the day-to-day. I find, you know, a lot of fond memories that then turned into some, we'll get into that in a little bit, but that turned into some, I guess, resentment of it when it was like a Saturday and, you know, mom was either out with the friends or was doing her thing with her business. And it was like, hey, I got to go to work. So let's get in the car and we're going to the office. And, you know, you sort of like find things to do when you're elementary aged or school age in that time. But I realized as time's gone on that it put into my mind that drive and the energy to be there, because it wasn't like negative when, and Jordan mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when I was in middle school and Jordan had just started high school, it kind of flipped with our dad from, hey, like we're just going there and, you know, like play on the computer, or like we had our stuff in the office because both of our parents were engaged in it, to hey, I want you to start like helping me set up computers for this project. Like then it turns into work. And I always found that to be very challenging. I always recall a story, and sometimes I say it with a smile on my face because I do a lot of work with this client now, and they've expanded greatly. That we had a job to do, I think at the time it was probably 26 locations between Maryland and Delaware. And we were putting computers into an early childhood education company because they wanted to bring in STEAM. They wanted to be early into bringing in that part of the education into their classroom. Well, they're really, really basic setups. And it was over winter break. And Jordan and I sat there 7 days straight over winter break and must have set up 120 computers in that time. And there wasn't really a automation for it. Now you just sign into an account and it kind of can do a lot of that for you. Then it was, you're hitting buttons on the keyboard on every single one. And we had a checklist and we were checking off and signing everything that went into it. But that it teaches so much. And when I got a little bit older, our mom decided to buy an existing business that's got a great brand reputation, different than VienerX. It's on the B2C side of the world. Seeing that was different. I was 15, 16 at the time, had an understanding, was always, from that upbringing, was really invested in what there was to do and could kind of understand more of what was going on rather than it being just sort of part of your life from really as earliest memory as I had. And it reinforced all those things. It made me, that was really the image of like, that's what I want to do. I want to get into the spot where I can own more than one thing, can get into it and really can see what it took. And it teaches, it nonstop teaches you. And even now, both of them still being heavily involved as the owner operator in those businesses gives the younger entrepreneur, I think this kind of speak for both of us in this, gives you somebody that you can always turn to and say, hey, I'm seeing this. What's the right way to handle it? How would you handle this? What advice can you lend to me? And since you have that relationship of knowing that person or them knowing me the entire time I've been alive, they know kind of exactly how to guide and how to lead. And that can create conflict, but it also, you always can resolve back to that person has my best interest in mind. And they're going to invest everything they have into me because that's what they've done their entire life. That's why they brought us into the business at the age. That's why they had us working at that time. And as I've gotten older and older, I see more and more of the positive of it. But there were definitely the days in the summer where I was just like, all my friends are at a lacrosse tournament in Ocean City, and I'm sitting here, setting up a Microsoft Link server with Jordan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk too much on that. I think Mason said more than enough. But there are certainly times I can recall, similar to what he said, where like I remember one time we were on vacation in Florida, and I wanted to do something. I don't even remember what it was. I remember our dad was working, and I was 12 or whatever, and I was like, Dad, for real? Like, I thought we were on vacation, like, we can't do stuff? And he just was like, yeah, this is what you gotta do to do stuff like this. I think being older than Mason growing up, I definitely got into the rebellion was part of having to help out much faster than he did. But going back to it, even then, I understood that, sacrifice has to be made to do the things you want to do in life. And I think we did see that firsthand a lot of the time. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that we had just growing up in a entrepreneur type household. Like Mason said, both of our parents are entrepreneurs now. So it's been an interesting journey. I've worked in both of our parents' companies. I don't think Mason's helped out in both, but I don't think he's actually worked in both. So I've seen different management styles from that way, and you take what you can from both and try to apply them to yourself. Is what I would summarize that as.
Yeah, a couple years ago, when COVID happened, in our industry, my industry is in alcohol and everything like that at the time, and all the bars and restaurants obviously closed down. So my business was done, and I mean, no revenue streams, no anything like that. So I was like, all right, I know how to sell, I know how to distribute. So a buddy of mine, it was when the overstock was kind of getting popular, where like Target was, all the consumer shifting had happened, and all the Target and Dollar General had over surplus on the shelves. So I got into the overstock, and my kids are at that time, they'd be 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. And so during the summer, that's what they'll tell you, that if you ask them what their favorite part or most sarcastic favorite part about dad running a business was, at Jimmy's Odds and Ends in the discount warehouse when I was buying the overstock, getting a razor blade and scraping off the price tags off of every single box that was on all the pallets that were coming in. And we'd have a tractor trailer pull up in the back, unload 20, 40 pallets. And my son would just like put his hands down because he knew he was going to he was spending the next week scraping away all the different, getting all the adhesives off. But it's so it's interesting to hear that though, because here's what it does. I think more than anything, it teaches you guys that what you just kind of touched on, it's the resilience in adversity, even as a kid, to realize just the simplest fact that not everything always goes the way you want it to. And I think you guys are older now. And are you guys parents yet?
No. Nope.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, as a parent, the hardest thing to get your kids resilient is this tightrope of, I want my kids protected and I want them to succeed in everything. And I want them to have the easiest way possible, because these are the things that I had challenges with my life. At the same time, as somebody who has seen the strength and adversity of those resilient challenges be something that catapulted me in life, I also want them to experience those things. So like as an entrepreneurial parent, I feel like we inadvertently get to give the bad and the good, because also I'm sure there's times where I can be open and say there's times where my kids at a very young age learned really quick what a budget is, and really knowing like, hey, this month is a light month. And it's like, okay, when we go to the grocery store, we're not getting anything extra. We're grabbing just what we need because it's a tight month, because, you know, it's a bad commission month or dry and droughts or whatever this month. And that's something as well where I think it helped my kids understand that banking on the same paycheck every Thursday in your direct deposit is a certain lifestyle that works for certain people, but getting the experience of understanding, not knowing week to week or month to month, like where the hunt to kill and where you're going to get that. It's scary at times, but I think we're in a place now, especially with my kids, because we have very deep conversations about this, because I'm always trying to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, that they appreciate it. That they appreciate that flexibility and that pivot, because I think one thing we've learned in the past 6 years since COVID definitely is that nothing's guaranteed in any aspect of anything. No process is linear anymore. Nothing is like predictable in a very confident way. And so kudos to you guys for having the outlook that you have on growing up in that world. But also I'll give you guys credit, as I know that there was times that had to be tough. And having two entrepreneurial parents launching two businesses, it must have been confusing to know that like my parents own businesses, yet sometimes we might be tight on money. And it's like, that's a hard thing, because it's like when you own a business, people assume you're a millionaire. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that owning a business sometimes might mean you have an asset for 10 or 20 years from now that's valuable. But right now, it's just a piece of paper. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the so I want to connect with you guys and let you know that, you know, this is the inspirational story about this. So I want to also tell you is that you guys, I wanted to have this conversation because you guys are not generational kids that are lazy. And I did my homework on you guys, and I wanted to have this conversation because there's a lot of times that we talk to different people, and it's like, well, I'm running my dad's business. No, that's not what you guys are doing. You guys are evolving about the mission that your father started. Your father was in the front of the safari with the machete chopping down the leaves. And guess what? Over time, those leaves and those branches are going to keep overgrowing. You're in the next round of chopping through the next path for whoever it is after that. So I want to give you guys that. And I want to talk a little bit about, do you guys have a different style now that you run things versus your dad? And I don't mean positive or negative. I just mean different way of running the business.
Yeah, I'll start with that. And I'll take somewhat of a step back to it. When I went to college and I had started a company, I'd helped start. One of our clients had left. He wanted to get into entrepreneurship. And I had the opportunity to work with him a little bit on that. One as a consultant from, at the time, it was Viener Gates. And then I actually joined up with him and got that true like ground zero startup story. And we were not successful at all at first. And it was a lot of, I guess you would call it farming if you're on like kind of the positive sales side. I, at that point, had this expectation from what I shared earlier of like, we're going to get into this thing. We're just going to kill it right away. It ended up working kind of alongside of the somewhat of like what you were saying, overstock product. COVID gave us opportunity because other people were completely hands tied, had supply chains. We were super flexible, had some cash sitting around that we could throw at getting materials and take some chances. And we were able to kind of connect dots on some materials. It was a government contractor. So it was really very, very at times like, you know, you're hanging out and you're getting paid net 180, net 120, just brutal days in that. And we were successful in it. And I learned a lot. And that's really when my dad really wanted to engage like Mason, the current version of it, if you will. Like I'd gotten that experience. It was really, really raw. Didn't end great, but it was successful. Just did not meet my expectations of it. Then you step into an established realm. And I kind of had that 360 view of what we did, from being out in the field, you know, hot days and no HVAC buildings, pulling cable before, you know, with a general contractor on site that was tough, to setting up the computers, to working with that. And when I came into it, it was, hey, I'm going to put you on a project and you're going to work with the guys that, you know, you worked with the field. They're going to do the field work. You're going to just work side by side with me on PMing it, which means you're in charge until I kind of see that you're going the wrong direction. And I'm just going to kind of course correct. And our dad and his team have always run their business like that. That's how we teach people. They spend time with management. They spend time with people that are established. And we have desks inside of offices, even in our current space, which is bigger than that one. Desk alongside desk, so you can literally sit side by side with management and learn. Like it's a hands-on learning experience for a lot of people. And as I see that, you start to say, oh, well, now I've seen what it looked like. I've got mom over here. She runs, you know, a seasonal business that staffs heavy, that's, you know, is up and down with just seasonality and different things on that. I've seen the government contracting world, completely different space of like temp to hires and inventory, and cash isn't coming in. Sometimes, you know, they're the government, they should pay on time, but we all know how that goes. That's not really true either. So I've seen the heavy, you know, inventory, cash in, cash out, getting guys, you know, on site in a warehouse, needing temp guys, all that stuff. And then you walk into, you know, what really is the blue collar, white collar hybrid, which is always where I find technology in a sense. In some ways, doesn't really matter who you are in it. If your fellow peers on a C team's computer doesn't work, they're picking up the phone sometimes and they're calling you, especially if it's those weekends, those nights, even in a 1,000-person company. Sometimes that's the case. You're still plugging stuff in. But the journey on the way up was very much stair step towards that, from being able to run a job towards growing into a very specific role with one of our clients, towards getting towards the data analytics piece, getting towards the C-level staff. I was able to sort of bring those experiences in and say, okay, how are we managing the personal relationships with the clients, and how are we giving people more tools that are going to drive revenue, rather than it being like, hey, I'm the server guy. And then now it's like, hey, I'm the cloud guy, or hey, I'm the data guy. But how do you sort of roll that up and make it be like, I'm the go-to in this space. You bring those problems to me, and I'm going to bring you business solutions that are well crafted, that fit the people in your space, rather than just saying like, yep, I want to put you on an AWS data store with this Microsoft front end. How is it like, okay, your team has this skill set. These products are going to give them the best results for that. We're going to evaluate a couple different things. We're going to go to it. We're going to bring the whole business into those conversations, and we're going to appoint kind of champions of those softwares or those products, depending on like, hey, I'm the tech guy. Here's your tech answer. Let's implement this thing, and it's going to cost you X number of dollars, and we're just going to do that.
Just trust us. Just trust us.
Yep.
This is go ahead, Jordan. Yep.
I was just going to say, Mason's got an interesting perspective on this, because he's been kind of groomed into this company, I don't know, since he was 16, versus I was tempted to, but I definitely did my own thing. I actually went.
Now I got to pause there. Did you resist? You resisted hard?
I'm not so resist as the word, but I didn't really. I decided I didn't want this early on. So I kind of had my own streak for a few years there, and made some, frankly, insane decisions as far as where I was doing in my young adult life. Not necessarily in a bad way, but career-wise, definitely. Until I kind of came back around to working here about a year ago. But in that process, I found some very interesting ways to manage and different ways to lead. Our dad loves to say that sports and coaching and business are all the same thing. And I got a very direct look at that from working in sports the last 5 years or so. And one thing that Mason said that I really want to echo that I learned from being with good coaches is good coaches are ones that adapt their scheme, what they're trying to do, to the personnel in the room. And I think, again, to Mason's point, a lot of people, both in management and in IT, try to force what they think winning is, what they think their solution is, onto the group that they're dealing with, regardless of if that fits or not. And that can work, but it usually doesn't. So I think that both in terms of our management style here and what we try to implement in the field, a lot of it is, okay, what have we seen that works that could fit this group versus this is what we want to do all the time. And we're still small enough and flexible enough that we're able to craft what we do to the strengths of the people that we have to an extent. To an extent, of course, you do have your core services and you have to match that. If it's adjacent, if we find people that have skill sets but also might be able to do other things, we've been able to say, like, okay, that's something we could look at adding to our product suite because our personnel can do that and they can teach the rest of our staff how to do those sort of things. Versus just saying, being rigid and being like, this is what we do, that's it. Having that flexibility and adaptability in all things with both management and services, I think is a great skill set that we really internalized here. And that's something that I actually admire about what we do here. Because I do think being too rigid in any facet of life boxes you in a way you don't necessarily need to do.
What let's give the audience kind of a snapshot of the scale in which you guys are, like, in the past 5 years or so. So you what year did you guys start with multiple locations for starters?
That goes.
And it's okay. Yeah, it's okay if you don't know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of goes in the Wayback Machine, but an idea of the scale, Nate, is my first year I really got into sales and we grew about 100% in the first year of that. And then since then, it's been just year over year growth. We see about 20 to 25% year over year. And a lot of it comes from finding partnerships with brands that want to see kind of what Jordan said. They want to see consistency and adaptability in the modern marketplace, especially the people that are still building brick and mortar that have had to get super flexible on making a space work for them, whether that's QSR, quick service restaurant, or it is childcare, or it is a auto parts store that some stores have service bays and some stores don't. Being able to put together a plan that keeps that business consistent, that keeps the brand consistent from everything that you see, from walking in the door and seeing, like a video wall, and how that can fit if you've taken the bottom floor of an apartment building in flex space and you want to bring that same vibe and that same space to it. It's some of those things where you walk into the people that have mastered it and you don't even notice it. And meanwhile, there are people sometimes like us working on the back end, sweating it out to the last minute, with some custom ordered bezel piece that's going to make the corner match the color of the feature wall, and it's put together. That is the background of everything. It's the background of a lot of people in construction. It's the background of a lot of people, I think, in every space that has to do with that is how can you make those little pieces go together? And a lot of our growth is in the adaptive flex space world of trying to sometimes jam technology into afterthoughts or make a storefront or a business match up with what they can really bring from a tech perspective and a brand perspective.
Yeah, if I could just interject on that one, I do think that's something we do that kind of goes underappreciated with multi-location sites. Because if you, as a consumer out there, you walk into Chipotle and you just expect it to look like a Chipotle. And you don't think about the fact that every store has a different layout, unless they're custom building it, which they do. But if you're using existing retail space, they got to make that space look like the same space, have the same feel and the same vibes on other spaces. And that's a challenging thing to do. And it's something we've gotten really good at because it's not easy. And I know we work in IT, but a lot of that light construction cabling stuff fits into that, where we have to be like, all right, how does this space match the feel of the other spaces, even though it's a completely different layout, completely different structure? It's a challenging thing that a lot of people don't think about. As Mason said, there's times where you really flat it out and you're like, man, this is going to be tough. This is a really wonky design, but you got to make it work, because when you walk into Chipotle or any of our customers, you expect it to look like the same vibe with other space, and it's just not the same thing. It's an interesting challenge we have to deal with pretty much in every job we do.
And
it's one of those. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say there's always really funny things that happen in that too. And my favorite one is this. We had a client that they took the USA Today headquarters, which was in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. They made that space. It's like a stunning office park now. It almost looks like you walk into a Marriott when it is, but they found like a corner space, and one of our clients bought it. They wanted to do sort of like a service to the tenants of it, and it was really the only thing that could fit into this. And I remember walking in there once, and I'm like, what was here before? And they're like, oh, this was the data center that they had in this building. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And then the building manager goes, yeah, but when we redeveloped it, we took all the internet connections out of here, and everything that you see here is cut off. And I'm like, okay, what are we thinking now? And I will tell you, that place was one of the biggest nightmares to get. They needed like a POTS line, like a plain old telephone line, which those of you who don't follow this, they're kind of ripping all of them out of the ground now. Like they're retiring that service as a whole. And it was probably the most challenging, and it was hilarious because it's a data center of this like 20-story building. It was probably the most challenging low voltage job I've ever run, just because nobody thought when they were just, cutting things off that that anybody was ever really going to touch it again. It was dead space in a building. It's a beautiful space now with a ultra successful business in it, but it's Jordan said it right. It's the background of making everything look the same regardless of where you are and all that. We
experience that in the beverage space, like where a lot of these beverage guys, these breweries, will be like, I got this beautiful rustic warehouse, and they'll invite me to come like see the vision, and we'll walk the dirt floor together. And that's what goes through my mind every time. I'm like, where are we wiring this place? Like what? Like I'm trying to think through all this stuff, and I'm like, you guys understand there's a lot of remodel work that needs to go into this before I can see the vision. And I think I appreciate the attention to detail that you guys give. Even when you said about the corner and the runner and everything like that, because it's the most overlooked stuff. Because when you're at a point in construction, when that comes to mind, if guys like you aren't, and girls aren't like you in the beginning of it, that are like pointing that stuff out, it's like phase 4 when you're almost done. And by that point, they're like, F it, let's just open the door and start making money. And that's like the worst time to come to that realization. So I appreciate you guys coming to the front end of that. Yeah, I've walked many dirt floors and saw people's vision for sure. Let's talk a little bit about for everybody to understand the IT world. All right. So I want people to understand that. And I have a little bit going to Drexel University. Obviously, I went to school with a lot of guys that went for computer engineering and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm overly understanding of actually the nuances that go in. So I don't buy into the stereotypes of IT and stuff like that. Although there's a great video on TikTok I'm going to send you guys yesterday or the day before of this judge that was on a Zoom in the middle of a hearing, and the Zoom was glitching, and he had to call the IT guy up while he was on the judge's stand. And then the IT guy literally hits one button, and the judge's ego was so offended and the guy literally under his breath, he's like, yeah, it was that simple. He actually I'll send it to you, but I want everybody to look it up online, because this is the opposite of what we're talking about here, is also why when you believe the stereotypes, the stereotype runs in the corporate world where it's not a paid attention to enough department, and it's not a paid attention to enough division, where people don't understand the infrastructure of communication does hinge on everything that you guys do. And so let's go into that a little bit for people to understand the value in which having properly secured information technology, networking systems, and communication flow, like how important that is for every business, regardless of your scale and size.
That's an all-Mason question. We'll let him take that by himself.
Yeah, Nate, I think you hit on it perfectly. Is I was given this by the CFO of one of our clients. He was like, I've always done this. When people don't respect IT, I draw a pyramid on a whiteboard. And a lot of people will say the top of the pyramid is, what a lot of people, where their eye goes immediately. And that might be the operation, the product, whatever they're producing. Nobody ever really looks at the bottom of it. And he goes, the bottom of it, that's you. And he's like, and you just have to keep that mindset of you might never get the attention for it until it breaks. But if the bottom starts cracking, the pieces of the top are going to fall down the side of it. I think in the modern day or this era where, there's all this flashy stuff, every day I look on social media and it's just like, I made this business with Claude code in 30 minutes that's, pumping out money. Or, hey, look at this thing that I can automate. It's clicking on the screen for me. And while all that is on the way, and it is real, and it is amazing, and it is scary in a lot of ways, the systems and the platforms that make all of that work, that make the pretty thing that goes into the Instagram reel, that align all those things, that is really what IT and security is morphing into if it's not already there. And depending on it, you also have to meet people where you are where they are when you're talking about technology and what it can do for a business. But a lot of what I've started to focus on in that CIO role and that CIO for hire role is alignment of the different SaaS providers that are ingrained in a business. It could be a CRM. It could be a CRM like a Salesforce. It could be an industry specific one. It could be an Excel sheet. And starting to gather all the key data that makes something, not necessarily like an AI engine works, that is your end result, that is what you want to start preparing yourself for, but that level sets what the business is talking about, that allows the cross-departmental connection to do it, and that there are the proper security permissions on that. And when you're building from the ground up, you have a leg up on the modern day. It doesn't matter if that's when people were still relying on the fax machine to work and they were making everything to go on fax paper and get out, or if it's now where you can say, okay, I'm going to align everything to be data focused, and I'm going to use the same terminology. I'm going to code everything the same way. I'm going to use a store number, a customer number, or a SKU number to do that. And everything that I do is going to become actionable. And then I can say whatever that end point is, whether it's I'm going to stop at kind of the Power BI side, I'm going to stop at the Salesforce side, I'm going to stop at that side, or I'm going to go what's become the step further. I'm going to try it with Copilot. I'm going to try and, buy ChatGPT for enterprise and configure that. I'm going to go with Claude. But everything is the data that comes out of your systems. Everything is the data that comes out of, for most people, it's a CRM. If it's not a CRM, it's like a Microsoft Dynamics project or a Power App on that side. Everything is the data and gathering the alignment around the data and coming up with the human factor of it, which is, are we all speaking the same language? When I say, customer number 123, and Nate, you're in ops, and you're like, well, we have that as, 1-123. Immediately, that's when that light goes off, and you're like, okay, we have to get the alignment on what we're speaking about, what those terms mean, our own definition and acronym chart, and then it's let's go gangbusters on the outputs that everybody wants to see, the pretty dashboards, the daily reports, the automation, all that stuff comes after it. But it is, what is the strategy around that? And what is going to drive revenue? What is really the most important thing that you have? And it's real. I was sitting with a sizable company, and they were pushing on where the value is in having a firm like us. And they were looking at all the end goals of it before looking at any of the process I just talked about. And sometimes you can only push so far. And I said, okay, let's get the one thing that's taking up the most time done. And halfway through that process, they realized, and they were like, well, why don't we stop and go back and look at everything that we're doing and make it sort of line up? And it's those conversations that become the most costly thing. It's those things where you see, I guess, the memes or the reels about how everything's built on, toothpicks and marshmallows on the end. And you don't want to end up, you don't have to end up there. You don't want to end up there. But so many people are always pushing for the result. They're always leaning on the IT guys or the data guys, depending on what size they are, even their analysts inside of it. If it's a bigger firm that's, all based on data, and they ignore the process, sometimes even beyond when it's a problem and when it's a time eater, and they aren't taking the time to lift their head up and evaluate all their software providers, all those SaaS providers, or how they're doing it, or even take the time to look at, hey, is this person going into 4 different systems and cutting this up to put this report on my desk every day? those are the time losers, and those are the spots where tech guys, if they're the ones that are doing it, really get leaned on beyond what a lot of people think they're doing, and they really build that backbone of a company.
It's one of those things in the sales world that I always believe is overlooked, where we don't do enough training from sales reps, and at least let me speak from my experience in the beverage world, that we don't do enough training for them to understand how important, let's say, call notes are. So for an example, like I might have at different times with clients, like I'll have 29 different sales reps up and down the East Coast, and all day long, 29 different sales reps are uploading onto an Excel file, 29 different call notes of 15 different stops they did. So every day you're at 200 some points of engagement, and then 5 days a week, four weeks a year, or 4 weeks a month. And what people don't understand is a lot of times that's where the follow-up gets lost. So from the simplest revenue standpoint, and I'm one person that's run my business for 17 years by myself, and I'll admit you, every week things fall through the cracks because of my own internal systems that always I'm trying to evolve. But also I'm not a big enterprise company, so I have to be a very bespoke about how I extract my data. At the same time, I'm in a deep pipeline because of the amount of outreach that I do, where I'm in my HubSpot is at 23,000 records. You know what I mean? So I'm one solopreneur with 23,000 records harvesting on a weekly basis. Now that's complicated enough for people to understand. And then to think about multiplying that off what you just said about what people need to understand is IT is part of computers, but at the end of the day, it's part of communication and language. And at the very beginning, it's how we communicate. So let's say I'm working with Ace of Vapes in York, Ace of Vapes in Harrisburg, Ace of Vapes in here. Well, let's say those 3 places, that's 4 different buyers. Well, those 4 different buyers have 4 different schedules that they're meeting with. They have 4 different methods of communication. This guy likes to be texted. This guy likes to be called. This guy likes to be emailed. This guy likes physical interaction. All those nuances get lost. And we, as front-end people of any business, let's say we're business development people, and that's sometimes what's in this audience here is CFOs, senior leaders and founders that are looking to grow their businesses constantly. If you don't have an IT strategy, and I don't care if you're me, I'm one guy with one business and one employee being me, I have an IT strategy. If I have it and a 50 or 100 or 150 million dollar or 150 person business doesn't, you will never get to what is in your head. Like it's not an opinion. And so I want to platform you guys in the sense of that as well, is that you guys are the unsung heroes. And I know that's an overused thing, but it is. And it's not for unplugging the monitor because the damn computer wasn't working. It's literally for harvesting the data that becomes the profile, that becomes the revenue, that becomes what saves and grows your business.
No doubt. And the thing that I always have felt like has unfortunately started to go hand in hand with that is, Nate, I'll spin around your example to you. Every SaaS CRM sales guy is going to tell you their product can fix the problem that you just went.
None of them do.
And without thinking, in a sense, just watching the demo or just seeing the new thing on the street, or what's become sometimes I feel, with that strategy piece and with the roadmap and with, what you want to put together, especially for a company, I would say, Nate, somebody that has as many records as you, more so than any size count employees, is you go to one conference and now there's 40 of them there. Every single industry conference, everybody's selling that. The demo world is the perfect world. Not having a strategy and holding people accountable beyond that, I've seen that the cost of that be numbers that just make you, like a tear roll down your cheek level of just like lost revenue, lost time, lost customers. I mean, everything in the end is revenue and customers. And every single sales guy out there knows how to say, if they're any good, knows how to sell their product and knows how to combat the objections and how to almost sometimes phrase, well, that one's on the roadmap, or we can put an enhancement request in there for that. And if you don't build language or have an advisor at the level that can read those contracts, make sure that you have any sort of protection on a master services agreement or on a contract with your providers, then you're in a spot where evaluating the business or going, like I said earlier, going too far down the road where it's the lift to get out of that's not there, or you need additional headcount or consultants to get you out of that point, is really the spot where you really have to make some hard decisions about what the right choice is from your business from a strategic technology perspective. But it's not only the technology perspective. At that point, it's your ops, your sales, your development, whatever you're doing on that side of it, you really see that all the way around impact. And you really have to think about justification and cost to get yourself out of that. But it is the decision making up front. And it is the unfortunate reality of what's become of everybody from VoIP sales to CRM salespeople of just getting a signature on that 36-month contract.
That's very good. I appreciate the customization and bespokeness of what you guys do, because at the end of the day, technology is the vehicle, but the humans are really the drivers. And that's where we have to understand that and allow people. And it makes me nervous every day. And I'm an early adopter of ChatGPT. I was one of the first people that downloaded it. I use it all day long, but I also use Parallel with Claude. And now this week, I have chills as I'm about to tell you. I started playing around with Cowork, and it's scary as hell. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I see the potential, but I also see the pitfalls. And so, like, learning that stuff and working that through is something where it's I see what's going on, and I wish we would pull it back and realize of the tool that it is, rather than letting it take the lead of the humans. I feel like these layoffs we're starting to see talk about and different things like that, I firmly believe that those people will be called back soon enough in a very short amount of time, because they're not remembering the things of what you guys serve in that aspect. And then also what the operators that are working as employees who are using the tools that you guys are servicing need to be a part of that. And I think we're a little gun excited about more profits and cheaper labor, and the short-term gain for the long term is misaligned, in my personal opinion. And I think those people will be coming back in some of those jobs too. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And Jordan and I were actually just talking about this. We were rebuilding the CRM for our own company. And I think I paused the other day. It was either over the weekend. And I was like, we're thinking about this, and we need to flip around what we would say to one of our customers to ourselves.
Yes.
If there's no processes, software only amplifies bad processes. Software does not fix bad people and bad processes. It generally makes it worse before it gets better.
Exactly.
And Jordan was like, I can't believe you just said that to me. And then it was like, well, that is real. The other piece on the AI side of it, and I see this with kids, I coach high school lacrosse, and I see this with them all the time, is the amount of them, and different schools run things different ways, but generally you hear about how your kids are doing in school that are on your team, make sure that you're balancing the academics with the athletics piece of it. The amount of times I see, so-and-so, I caught them cheating using AI has become such a regular communication to even me as a background assistant coach in it, that when you talk to that generation that maybe got to middle school or 8th grade and this started to become a thing, and as they got into high school, and really those years where I love when I get to say this now, back in my day, that wasn't real. But now it is like the most real thing that, parents are pushing their kids to do it to get better grades. Teachers are pushing against it because you don't learn anything. Everybody is sitting around, with their own perspective of what the value add to their specific livelihood is, whether they're a student or whether they're sitting in an office. And nobody stops and thinks about, if people stop reading and writing, the damage that it will do. The damage that, think about it, if you're listening to this as an operator and you're pushing, leaning on your IT people, leaning on your ops people to bring in these tools. If the knowledge gap starts to separate, and Nate, you're talking about a completely different thing of firing the knowledge gap, laying them off. If the knowledge gap is only the data, ask it the hard questions. And we all joke about the DOW in Claude, or the Claude in the war scenarios, or the original one, the Microsoft AI agent in the Reddit chats. And you think about the conclusions that those drew, and given there's a lot of human factors in it, but there's human factors in anything as long as there's human factors, and forget the technology piece, you can go back through history and say that, is the damage of something that can think but does not understand is absurd. And I saw it the other day. I built an agent. It's great for one thing. I put a Microsoft data table into it, and it started just to spew out false information. And a lot of the people in the room were like, oh, that's what you mean when it's hallucinating. I'm like, yeah, it also makes this thing unusable, because now it's unreliable and it's just telling you whatever it wants. It was making things up using actionable data. So it wasn't wrong in its assumptions, but it was making up something that if I didn't sit with them for the last 3 years, I would have just thought it was right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jordan. Yep.
And Mason knows this. And actually, there's a lot of people in the office here that I am, which is insane to say as a technology provider, I'm very anti-AI, which is not a secret here in the office. Because of a lot of the reasons Mason said, I think it has the potential to do far more harm than good. Because people don't think. And people already don't think. We all know the old adage that people are stupid and they follow whatever they follow. People get in line for anything. Or nothing, I think is the actual terminology. And that's this is a great example of that, where I actually was talking to somebody today about, we do a video series about technology tips for general consumers. And I had another idea, and the guy, our technician, actually was like, I want to do a video about why you shouldn't always trust AI, because AI doesn't know how to say, I don't know.
Yes.
Which, saying I don't know, as I think anybody in business would tell you, is an incredibly valuable thing, because a lot of people don't do it. And when you talk about replacing people with AI, which I have deep moral issues with that we're not going to get into right now, that's a big thing, is that it will never tell you I don't know. It will always try to find an answer for you, even if it doesn't know the answer. And it will spew out wrong information, which if you're not thinking critically or you don't have all the information yourself, like Mason just referenced, you're going to believe because it's supposed to know. And that's very dangerous just for people in general, because people are wired to find the easy answer. And I mean, I've done this too when I have used it. I'm sure everybody else out there has as well, where I did a thing in AI and it gave me the wrong info. And someone's like, what the hell are you doing? That's wrong. And I was like, oh, crap, I didn't know. It was just the AI engine. I assumed it was right. And that's a really dangerous thing, because the other thing with AI, and I've seen this referenced a lot online, is it can't be held accountable. If you're using this thing to make decisions, and the decision's wrong, and you realize it down the line, there's a story out there, maybe where it was just, they were using it for reporting, whatever the company was, and the data was wrong, and no one checked it, and it looked correct enough, and later down the line, someone was like, hey, what are we basing this on? This doesn't look right. And they went back far enough, and like, oh, the AI number said this, and we're like, a week down the line now, the data was wrong, and what are you going to blame? You can't fire the AI. I mean, you could, but no one's going to do that. And that's the when you talk about the race to zero with this thing, the race to replace people with AI, which ultimately is the goal of these corporations, which again, I don't like, but I hear what you're discussing. That's my concern, is eventually when Mason talks about getting to the knowledge gap, the hazard is you replace them with something that can't be held accountable. It doesn't know. And if you fire everybody that knows, eventually this thing's going to mess up a baseline assumption. And you're going to be up the creek without a paddle, because you fired everybody that knew what they were doing. So to all the people out there that are encouraging AI use in their company, that's fine, that's your decision, but you have to make sure you have the checks in place to do that. And you can't, it's a tool, it's not a replacement for people. Even though you might want it to be to cut down costs, you have to make sure you can always back check the assumptions it's making, because at the end of the day, as my dad, who loves AI, always tells me, this thing's a probability model. The ultimate thing that's doing when you talk about LLMs, what they actually are, is it's doing calculation of, when you write result, what's the next logical answer word to put behind it for the prompt you put in. That's all it's really doing. It very rarely will check anything, despite what it's trying to do. They're trying to make it do. Ultimately, just kind of making educated guesses. They may be right more than often than not, but they are just educated guesses at the end of the day. It's a tool. That's our replacement.
No, that's perfect, and they're great quotes from in there. I'll close out with this one little story, and then we'll go into the close out with your overview for everything. Is the other week I was grabbing real current events, real headlines, and I was in the same chat, so I wasn't breaking different projects and breaking chats. So in the AI's mind, it was the same stream of conscious. I started it by doing prospecting, so I was uploading businesses and people's names and stuff like that. Then in the same chat, I was like, something for the Epstein files popped up, and I was like, oh, interesting. Let me dive deeper into this. So I asked it to expand upon anything that wasn't in the article that might connect and understand me in a bigger picture. For literally 5 minutes, it confused me, because it went back to my prospecting that was in the beginning of the chart and started to cross-reference the people I was prospecting and trying to find ways that they could have possibly been in the Epstein files. And I was like, and then it started to create the reality that those people were in the Epstein files, and then connected dots for me, where I had to literally call it out. And I don't get aggressive in it often. I said, you got to stop this. And it projected back to me, which is the first time for ChatGPT I stopped for a while, was it gaslighted me and told me that I was being tinfoil hat and conspiracy theorist, and I wasn't accepting what it was telling me. And I was like, whoa, you literally are connected. Like, anyway, sometimes AI can be the crazy guy in the back of the bar, and I don't really like that aspect as well.
Yeah, I'll give you one other really good example. My dad's working on creating AI chatbots for different companies, which is a project that stopped and started. But he created one with a actual background. Like, he gave it a personality, and one of them was this guy's a Giants fan. But part of its personality was that it was in Philadelphia. So I also lived in Philadelphia, by the way, Nate. I went to Temple.
Nice. My girlfriend's son is a junior ROTC Navy at Temple right now.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah. But anyway, so he works with that in the background. The guy lived in Philadelphia. I was like, okay, so are you an Eagles fan? And it made the probability, Philadelphia NFL team. Yeah, you're an Eagles fan. And I was writing an article about this. So I sent it to my dad, and he called me. He was like, what the hell are you talking about? He's a Giants fan. It's in his background. And I was like, I asked it what fan it was. It said Eagles fan. It was just like, it just made the guess, because that's all it really does. I mean, I told you it was a Giants fan. So to your point, it's wrong more than you would like to admit sometimes.
Exactly. Well, hey guys, I'm looking forward to, I'm going to have you guys, like I said, I want to bring you guys back again. We're going to do some roundtable stuff this year, and we'll do topical stuff. So I'd love to bring you guys back for those as well. So Clifford will come in, and then we'll bring another person in on this. And then we'll kind of do like some topical discussions on communication, language, networking, maybe even AI, if you guys want to talk about it, whatever you guys want to talk about. But real quick, as we kind of close out this episode, first off, thank you guys for coming out on a limb. And I'll remind everybody, there's no script, there's no agenda, there's no questions. I had a meeting with these guys for a little bit, about 20, 30 minutes prior, about completely different stuff. And they got to know about me. So this was exciting to get to know about you guys in front of everybody, and remind everybody that, there's no script and there's no agenda. And it is this easy in the world today to get to know somebody and meet a stranger. So I want to encourage people to network with people. Don't be transactional. Just hop up, have a conversation, and get to know somebody's story. And, you might get to know something different about what you did, and, not judging every book by its cover. So real quick, Mason and Jordan, anything you guys want to add, where people can find you, website, your YouTube channel for the clips that you guys do, as well as everything like that, so they can follow you guys along on your journey?
I'll let Jordan cover that. I'll leave you with a piece of advice. If you're going through a business, make sure you're finding where your data is, and make sure that you can always get it out if you want to move to that. But I'll let Jordan plug his social media accounts.
Sure thing. You can find us on the web at VienerX.com. That's VienerX.com. You can find us on all the social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, or X, Instagram, TikTok. Always the handle is at VienerX. We produce plenty of stuff, so feel free to check us out. If you got questions, you can always shoot us a message. We're happy to talk to you.
Perfect. And I'll close out when we talk about human connection and the environment and the ecosystem. Shout out to Susie Lyles-Reed, my not classmate necessarily. We weren't there at the same time, but we've known each other for about 20 years now in Mercersburg Academy. So shout out to that, and the alumni keeping together, and thanking her for introducing me to you guys. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you guys more over the next few weeks and months and stuff like that. And anybody else as well in the Mid-Atlantic region, definitely reach out to these guys, as well as anywhere else they might be working. Check them out. And I'll close out to remind everybody, this is going to get a little bit vulgar for a second, boys. But remember, as I do tell everybody, don't be a piece of shit out there. As you're walking down the street on the sidewalk, look a stranger in the eye. Hold the door for somebody. When you're at the gas station filling up your coffee, look to the guy or lady next to you, ask them how they're doing, and actually pause and listen and care. Because today everybody feels alone. There's a lot of weight in the world, but this human connection and what you just saw over the past 45 minutes, this is strangers. We've never shaken hands. We've never shared a drink together, but this is how you meet people. And this is how the world changes, because we're not going to change all the big stuff. That stuff's going to happen. But if we can feel secure and we can feel like a human connection, that's the joy, and that's the journey of this life that we're in. So Jordan and Mason, thank you guys so much for telling your story. But most of all, thank you for the courage of hopping on blind on a podcast, not knowing what I was going to ask, and allowing your story to go out to the world and trusting me with it. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Nate.
Awesome, guys. You have a good rest of your day. I'll shoot you guys some information on release and all the clips and everything like that.
All right. Cool. Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.